just find that a lot of developers are hell-bent on developing a great game and they never think about who's going to play it. If you're a indie, failure rate is probably 9 out of 10 because they can't find an audience.
Today I'm joined by a veteran games executive with more than 30 years in the industry, building, scaling, and buying game businesses across some of the biggest brands in gaming. He has published more than 300 licensed interactive games and led companies including Hasbro Interactive, Games.com, and Atari. Should someone who's just getting into the industry be thinking about licensing? Is it something that happens later on in their career?
You know, what licensing does from a point of view of an entrepreneur is that it creates an opportunity for an audience. And, hopefully the license has a pre-existing audience and that audience will be attracted to the new game and will come over.
We talked about what licensing really looks like for a developer, what makes a game commercially viable, and what founders need to understand about funding, acquisitions, and long-term growth.
It needs to be fun the first time you play it, but then it's like, wow, that was so good, I'd like to play it again. Always focus on, is it fun and is it something that I want to come back to again?
From someone who has worked across licensing, merger and acquisitions, publishing, and game strategy, please welcome this episode's guest, founder of Dusenberry Entertainment and former CEO of Hasbro Interactive, Tom Dusenberry. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Harry. It's a pleasure.
Hell yeah. Alrighty. So we have so much we can talk about. So we kindly kind of had a little chat before the podcast to think about what from the last 20, 30 years we can talk about. So we have a lot to get into. It's going to be a good one. I want to open with your own words, what you're up to now. So I will give a quick rap sheet for people who are tuning in. So Tom Dusenberry founded and was the CEO of Hasbro Interactive, which was the gaming division of Hasbro, which then had a very successful exit. And then from that, Tom has been consulting within the games industry, M&A, licensing over the last 2 decades. So we've got someone who's not only built one of the kind of biggest IPs from the ground up, but then helps others do that. So that's why we're super happy to have this chat. And yeah, Tom, in your own words, what are you doing these days? What's taking your mind?
Yeah, thank you, Harry. I'm doing a lot of different work. I stay in my lane, so I'm a game guy, and I pretty much focus on that only. But I do some merger and acquisition work. So I work with different companies that need to either, find a growth opportunity or they're in a distressed situation and they need to, find a new home. And I'm very comfortable in that environment because I've done a lot of deals in the past. So that's a part of what I do in my job. And then, I'm also, I've actually just written my autobiography. So it's, my experience and all the stories I've had from a point of view of being in the game industry. And I primarily focus on licensing. And I work a lot with entrepreneurs and we create opportunities that then could be sold to big companies. So that's kind of the connection point that I make. And I'm very focused right now in an area in the game business called hybrid entertainment. And that's where you have both a physical product and then you have digital interactive experiences as well that creates kind of like a platform type of an environment. So those are the big things that I'm working on. But, I'm also creating a new prediction-based game right now. And I'm working on several other projects as it relates to just like mobile app games that I'm kind of excited about.
Love it. I love the hybrid stuff as well. I had a recent conversation with someone who's looking to do a board game and then later a digital game. So I have a few questions there. Great. So we'll kick off. So I want to define some terms because I feel like in the games industry, like, for example, the job title of a producer means so much. I also think people have different understanding or levels of understanding of what licensing is. So should someone who's just getting into the industry be thinking about licensing? Is it something that happens later on in their career? If I'm working in the games industry, what do I need to know about licensing? Coming from you who've seen kind of pretty much everything.
Yeah. So, for me, the most important thing for anybody that's getting into the industry needs to focus on is fun. And that is that, it needs to be a really good experience. And what I mean by fun is that it needs to be fun the first time you play it, but then it's like, wow, that was so good, I'd like to play it again. So it has kind of a repeat value to it. And that creates engagement. And so, that's kind of what we're focused on. So to get to the licensing part, what licensing does from a point of view of an entrepreneur is that it creates an opportunity for an audience. And, hopefully the license has a pre-existing audience and that audience will be attracted to the new game and will come over. So that's what's really important. So, you were saying that, people have different opinions of licensing. And so I've been in this business, for a long, long time and have a pretty good understanding of it. And licensing really comes down to it's like out licensing. And so that would be a big company that wants to go out and broaden their opportunities with their brand. And so they're looking for people to license their properties. And then there's in licensing. And that is where there's entrepreneurs like me that go in and say, hey, we'd like to tie in with your brand, or we'd like to license your brand and be able to work with it so that we can expand the opportunity. So there's multiple dimensions to licensing that you kind of have to factor in as it relates to whether you want to use it or not.
All right. Let's focus on the in licensing because I'm guessing that's more relevant to the game devs listening to this. So, is this reserved for big dogs, or can this be done by someone who's maybe earlier in their career? Like, is there a level of requirement you need to even consider in licensing?
Well, in today's world, it seems that licensing is really, with the big players. So it's Call of Duty and League of Legends and that type of stuff. But to me, what I try to focus on is the indie market, the independent developer. And that's where if somebody has established something and they've got a pretty good following, but they need to get a bigger following, that's where in licensing could be very effective for them. So that's where there could be one leap. And then the other could be is it in a concept stage, you have something that's so perfect for Harry Potter, as an example. You have to go to Warner Brothers and say, this is just made for this product and you should license it. And what the licensors will probably do at that point is that in the industry we call slice and dice. And what they'll do is that, Star Wars, as an example, has a master toy license or a master game license with somebody. And then what happens is there's specific areas that those master toy licenses don't want to support. So those become new opportunities and new channels for the licensor to be able to find new partners with. So there's a lot of that from an entrepreneurial perspective of trying to find a very, very niche in a license and then do in licensing to be able to find that audience.
Beautiful. So let's role play if you don't mind. So I'm a few years into the industry. I feel like I can make good systems based games, right? People want to play over and over again. And I think one of the Disney IPs is going to be perfect for this game. Am I all out of luck and I should just temper my expectations and like Star Wars and Disney is reserved for like the kings of the world or some of these big behemoths? Like I'm thinking when I think, okay, I don't want to create a new IP. I want to use one that's working and I found one. Like, should I only go after ones that are kind of my lane? Does that make sense? Like, I feel like it's quite a daunting task to go to Warner Brothers, right? And say, hey, can I make a Harry Potter game? Should I even try?
Well, definitely. And there, whether it's Disney or Warner Brothers or EA or whoever the company is, there's a business development group that's looking for new innovation. And the whole industry is based upon new. And so even if you have a new idea for League of Legends or Call of Duty or one of those, you should go to the companies because they might be finding it's a new niche or a new opportunity for them. And what I find generally, Harry, is that the big companies have what's called a consumer products division, and those people are there to go out and seek out licensing opportunities with small entrepreneurs like us. I think the nuance is that there's so much going on that it becomes a relationship driven type business. So I
Hmm.
find that a lot of times people will come to me to help them get into the company because I know who to go to, how to get involved with them, and then also to negotiate a deal that's an opportunity. So it's something to consider from a point of view of if you want to go direct and you're not having any success, maybe you could find a consultant or somebody that could really have access that could get you to the promised land from a point of view of what your licensing strategy is.
Beautiful. So before I go to a consultant, I'm guessing there's like a checkbox or a checklist I need to kind of mentally do. So what should I be considering before I even go and try to find an IP for my game? Like, what would you say is like the minimum standard I should be hitting?
What do you mean specifically?
Yeah. So, for example, team size, how far along the product is. Can I go with a PowerPoint? Will they then only look at my track record? Like, there's a level of idea or system I would need to make. But of course, I need the IP to make the full game. So I don't want to go too far. That's my thinking. It's like, where else, what stage should I go?
Okay, well, this is a really important point. I think that um, you have to look at it from a point of view of the further along you are, the more likely it is that you'll be able to be successful with a license. And what
Okay.
I mean by that is that you may have the greatest idea in the world with that it's a PowerPoint presentation, and they may buy it. The likelihood is probably close to zero. From a point of view that they need some type of validation or some type of proof. So even to get to, it's the steps of being able to go through to be able to do a deal. So usually it's the idea, it's like the documentation of the idea, meaning the slide deck, and then it's like a proof point, which is generally like a video or something that kind of like a show and tell type thing. And then who's the team? Are they able to do it? And how far along can they get from a point of view of developing the fun factor before they have to go in and have to reach out and show the consumer product company that they want to license?
So to make sure I got that, even with an idea, I can start the conversations, and once I get a simple yes, I can then go and finish the job.
Yeah. But there's no commitment on the other side. You're showing them something. They're generally going to say, "Oh yeah, that's pretty cool."
Go
As you
for
go
it.
further along, let me see it. Right.
Yeah.
So to me, that's always the push off. From a point of view that's like they're being kind to you by being nice by saying yes, and they're not saying no at that moment, but they're also not committing. So they're saying, "Hey, if you get further along, why don't you come back and show me again?" It's a path to go down, no question about it. But it's also, you need to understand that when they're saying, show me something more, they're kind of saying no at what you're showing them at that stage.
All right, beautiful. So, do you think every game developer should consider IP, or is it a situation where it depends? Like, when should I not consider getting an IP for my game?
If your game's really fun, and you have an ability to find an audience, you're definitely better off not using a license, from a point of view that you own the product and you're probably creating a license that people will want to draft off of you down the road. So it all depends on what your need is and what your goal is for the game. I find that there's lots of indie games right now that are small, but they have a really nice following to them, and they're creating a great business for the developers that are doing it. So to me, why would you add a license? It adds a complexity to your business, and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of depends on what your situation is and what your need is from a game perspective on whether you want to really add a license or not.
Hmm. Like in my head, there's two big problems, right? It's the cost to create a game and then the discoverability of that game. And in my head, the license, from my understanding, only helps with discoverability. But you know better than me. Like, are there elements of the deal where they fund part of it or they fund part of the marketing? Like, what does a type of agreement look like?
Well, from a point of view of the developer, the advantage of the license is that there's probably some type of a storyline that you're following, or some type of a visualization or something. So that's a big advantage from a licensor or from a developer's perspective, because you've already got that. So that's a factor. And a lot of times, if you're a big studio and you've got these licenses, you want to say, I'm going to create 5 different games, and you go out to the marketplace and say, hey, give me suggestions on what you could do with my IP. And they come back with really weird and crazy ideas and say, yeah, let's fund that and see if we can make it happen.
All right, cool. So you're one of the few people who I can ask this question. So you've seen multiple eras of gaming, the ups, the downs. Some would say we're in a downturn now, but a lot of other people who say, well, actually, it's a huge opportunity now because there's so many moving parts. And you've been here so long. So you've been through Hasbro Interactive, and that had so many IPs and they were successful. And now we're in 2026. So much has changed. But I'm wondering what hasn't changed, maybe. Like, what are people forgetting is a essential part of succeeding in the games industry.
Yeah. So I think if you look at other industries like movies or books or toys, they're all kind of going in the same direction as it relates to what their audience is. And games, I think, is really really different than those types of industries because it's so vast and it's so complicated from a point of view of how it's looked at. And so, to me, it's been amazing because in my entire career, every year has been a growth year for the game business up until the last couple. So, I mean, talk about the land of opportunity. I mean, when you're in an industry that just grows and grows and grows, and it just showed an amazing propensity to be able to find new genres. So, it found fitness with Wii, it found adult with Grand Theft Auto, and it's these huge, huge categories that are coming out of these different ways to look at games. So when I look at the game industry, it has gone up and down because of different platforms. I mean, after the Atari era, I mean, it was like there wasn't going to be another game industry. It was just over. It was just such a disaster. So it's gone through ups and downs, but it continues to find ways to grow. So today, it's a little bit different, and that is that we're not a growing industry anymore. We're a $200 billion industry that's got some ups and some downs associated with it. And I will say that we're still kind of going through the pandemic clear out. And that is that we just got so excited as an industry. We just built so much stuff, and all people were doing is sitting around playing games. So it was kind of like a euphoric type of a period of time that everything worked, everything was great, and everybody was getting paid. And then the pandemic was over. And then we got hit a second time right between the nose, and that was with AI. And those two hits have been just amazing. And I look at headlines now where Xbox says we had record earnings and we just laid off 18,000 people, and it's like, wow, what's going on with that? And it's AI, and I think that AI is just having a very dramatic impact on the industry, and we're needing to sort that out as an industry right now.
See, I have some thoughts. I'm lucky enough that I don't necessarily have a stake, yet. I haven't started a game studio. I've got the domain just in case. But for me, I like to look at it and compare it to other industries. And at least for me, the games industry has so much more opportunity than kind of negatives in the big picture. However, the headlines are typically negative. And I want to ask for your opinion. I don't know if I think I'm definitely being naive, but you're one of the people to ask. So you use that example. So Xbox, record earnings, layoffs. And then we have the contrast where I don't know if you saw the Epic Games story. They had 1,000 people laid off recently. And in the CEO kind of letter that Tim did, he wrote that they got 500 million worth of savings. He actually, one of the few times where they mentioned it, and they referenced that they weren't profitable. Like they were actually burning so much money on Fortnite because Fortnite kind of went down. It was less engagement. They used that language. And I'm looking at that, I'm like, why does it have to be so sudden? Surely there's a balance sheet optimization thing going on here because that feels avoidable. Does that make sense? Like, there's no way. Like, yeah, this is where I feel like I'm naive. Like, why would you need to do it so drastically, 1,000 people at a time? I'm just wondering if there's anything you can maybe explain of like why this is the case and maybe something that people are missing.
Yeah. So, it kind of comes down to supply and demand. And that is that, if the Fortnite audience is shrinking, all of a sudden there's a pressure from a point of view of how much staffing you have. And from a CEO perspective, to piecemeal things down in your organization is really hard because it's hard on your employees. So a lot of times you just have to make the tough call, and you have to look at, what the trends are, what the long-term opportunity is, and you just have to make the cuts. And a lot of times, people find it amazing because you lay off 1,000 people, and then a month later you're hiring 300 new people. And it's just the ebb and flow of how the business works and what your needs are. And so to me, as the top guy in this industry, you've got to understand, what your audience participation is, and you've got to have a staffing balance that goes with, that audience participation.
Fair. Alrighty. So maybe a bit on the nose question, but if I'm doing my own IP, should I be trying to make something like Fortnite, which can, at least for me, Fortnite is one of those golden examples where it's an IP that can allow so many other IPs in. There's only a few that have done that well. Should more
Yeah.
be people trying to do that?
Well, I think that, Fortnite came at a time when there was a technology change, and it was cloud-based, you know, gaming. And so they really captured that imagination. And I do agree that, what they were able to do with their platform, and it was probably driven primarily by the technology that they had, is that they were able to do derivative type stories and derivative type products out of it. So to answer your question, if you're trying to do a Fortnite, the first question is that what's the paradigm change in the marketplace that you're pursuing? Meaning, is it cloud-based games or whatever? And then the second question is that when you're building that, can you build it for a good gameplay experience for yourself? But are there others that would be able to take that, use it as an SDK, and then be able to build other types of storylines and other types of patterns that would be effective for that specific audience?
Hmm. The studios that I had someone on the podcast recently, we talked about systems based games. So a game where the core gameplay will be so fun, where there's kind of endless replayability because it's the system that's fun and you can prop it in different areas. And you mentioned the point of, having either the players or other devs, like for example using Unreal, and they can make almost games on your game. For me, is that restricted to the big boys? I just feel like if I'm going to make a game, why not make it replayable, and why not make it at least with the scope in the future someone can make stuff on my game? And I speak to people who want to make their own story, and you play it, and it's 10 hours of entertainment. Like, isn't that just shooting yourself in the foot? Like, I'm almost like, from a business perspective, why would you make a game that has an endpoint and is story and narrative based if you can hopefully, try to make a systems based game which will just perform better, like from a purely business perspective?
Well, I mean, there's different ways to be able to play games. If the object of the game is to score 100 points, at the 100 points the game is over. So, I mean, it kind of depends on what you're doing from the point of view of what your objectives are. If your game is a journey and the journey has a never-ending ability to bring new content in, it really doesn't need to ever end. It just needs to go to another, part of what the journey is. So it kind of depends on the composition of what you're trying to do. Now, like for me, even back when we were starting Hasbro Interactive, we were building all of our own tools, and everything was really important. But Epic came along, and they had Unreal Engine. And Unreal Engine was very attractive to us from a point of view that it was already kind of pre-established. It had a well-established SDK to it, and we were able to take that and convert it over to like the Nerf blaster. And so we reinterpreted what that shooter type of an experience would be. And that was great from Epic's point of view because it was the first third-party deal that they ever did. But it was great from our point of view, from a point of view that it really probably saved 6 to 8 months in time, and it probably saved, $500,000 to $1 million in infrastructure of the game because of the fact that we were riding off of the Unreal Engine.
I mean, bit of an obvious question, but like, if I'm newer to game development, should I just pick Unity or Unreal and like calm my ambitions of making my own engine? Because I'm looking at Helldivers 2. That's made on a custom engine. I wonder if that's like an exception more than the rule.
It kind of depends on your resources and your vision. So, if you have unlimited resources, go for your own platform. It's really great. On the other hand, if your experience is that you're limited in your resources, but you want to get to the marketplace and start generating revenues, writing off somebody else's platform is probably a very cost-effective way to be able to do that and still deliver a fun experience.
All right. So I want to go back in time to the Hasbro days for a second. So you did so many new games, right? Can you remind us, like, how many actual titles, if you remember ballpark, like we shipped during your time there?
I think around 300.
So that seems like a crazy number, right?
Yeah.
Because that's also 20 years ago. Like, why aren't, but should people be making like more games and getting more shot on goal rather than like spending all their time on one game for 2 years? If you're catching the question.
Well, during that time, I was a guy that was very driven by growth. And so to me, the reason we had a lot of games was that we were covering a lot of categories. So because of the fact that we had Monopoly and Clue and Trivial Pursuit, we had an all-family type category that we were able to pursue. We had a kid category, so we were doing Nickelodeon and Disney and Chutes and Ladders and all that kind of stuff as well. But for me, it was like, shit, those are very traditional type businesses, and I'd rather get into more the meaty business of games. So that's where acquisitions became important. So I bought Spectrum Holobyte, I bought Microprose. With those, I got these great titles such as Civilization, and I got, Falcon 4.0, and we got Star Trek and all that kind of stuff. So those were now additional categories that we're beginning to pursue. And then to me, it was the promised land was to go into sports. And so when we looked at sports, it was like, yeah, there's football, yeah, there's basketball. And then we found motorsport racing and NASCAR specifically, which was just a huge hit from our point of view. So Harry, the reason that we had a lot of different games was we had a lot of different categories that we were covering. And so, that was kind of the essence of why we were building the businesses that we were. And we were finding that, we could spend $1 million to $2 million in development and we would generate $8 to $10 million in revenue. So it was a nice little profit center, and we were finding these audiences to be able to push out. And, part of that, I was driven to be able to want to do Frogger. I'm a Frogger fan. And because Frogger worked out, it became a strategy and a category as well. So I ended up going, I got Pac-Man, I got Tetris, and then I bought Atari. So I acquired the entire company of Atari, which created a new category for us, and that's when we did all of our retro type games. So, it was just an execution of strategy was kind of basically what it was, and I was pursuing many different categories.
Beautiful. I'm going to repeat back to you a quote I've heard multiple times on this podcast, which is if you're going to make a game 9 out of 10 times, that might be generous. You're not going to make your money back. So you should admit that is a gamble. And if you're not prepared for that, you're being silly. Now, you happen to have shipped 300 games, or at least witnessed them, right? So do you think that is a correct statement? There's a correct kind of philosophy to have when you're building a game?
Well, it depends. I don't think that if you were to look at like Warner Brothers or EA's track record, that they would be losing 9 out of 10 times,
Fair.
because they're doing market preparation and they're doing analysis and they're doing beta testing and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to mitigate success and failure if you're the big company. If you're a indie, the failure rate is probably 9 out of 10. You're probably right because they can't find an audience. So to me, I just find that a lot of developers are hell bent on developing a great game and they never think about who's going to play it. And it's almost has to be the other way, and that is who's going to play it and how can I make a game that they're going to be really attracted to.
Mm. So, with the games you've witnessed over the last few years, I wonder if there's any common threads. Did they all, let's assume that they're thinking of the audience first. Is there any other decisions that they're making that you see is like, that is what a game dev should do?
Well, like for me, I'm primarily playing mobile games right now.
Yeah.
And so I say I commit probably an hour and a half a day to being able to play my games,
Oh,
and
wow. More than me.
what I find is that it's downtime for me. It's like wanting to further the journey, and it has to have some type of repeat play that is like easy for me to get in and out of, and then I want to come back and do it again. And so, like right now, I'm actually playing a product called Puzzle Pyramid, which is it's a
Okay.
skill based game that comes from World Winner. But for some reason, Harry, I'm just addicted to this game. And I was looking at it the other day. It was kind of embarrassing because I was, looking at, where am I spending my time? And I'm 200 games short of playing that game 5,000 times.
Wow.
And then I looked at it and I started to look at other players and said, geez, I must be a nut by doing this. There are players that have played 32,000 times, 27,000 times. So it's that addictive quality that brings people back over and over and over. And
Yeah.
so, that's what I look for in gameplay experience. And funny enough, I'm a LinkedIn guy, just like, everybody else is. And about, I don't know, 75 days ago, LinkedIn sent me a gameplay suggestion to play Zip, which is the little
Yeah, there you go.
pattern game that they have. I've played that 75 straight days.
No way. I
I
found a
look forward to
LinkedIn
it.
Games player.
And you know how long it takes to play? A minute. But it's, I
Yeah.
go back to it every day. I want to figure the puzzle out. It's just a real quick mind game. But so to me, I played Fortnite not endlessly, but but there's mobile games and there's LinkedIn games. There's just so many different opportunities to be able to play
Mm.
games these days.
That's very interesting because now that you said that, finally LinkedIn Games kind of has clicked for me. It's like, well, you are logging into LinkedIn every day to finish your zip. And I think that might be like, why New York Times bought Wordle, right?
Right.
Wordle is now hosted on that site. It's a click away, and then now you're on New York Times. Um, Interesting. Do you think this is a mobile only thing or is this a cross platform thing? Like having this replayability kind of every day? Like, should every game be in your. I'm making absolute statements because I feel like I speak to most game devs and they are trying to make what they grew up on, these big PC console games,
Mhm.
and they exist even within mobile gaming studios, a lot of them. And they feel like, when are we going to make our own game? Or when are we going to make this game that I grew up on? And at least for what I'm seeing, like, make money and pay the bills, it's these replayable games, which are different to what kind of the MMOs or the console games we grew up on. And the more people I speak to on the podcast, for me, it makes sense. Like, we need a replayable game. It's a different world. I struggle to put into words that it kind of makes me sad. I feel like they're spending 2-3 years doing something which is just not likelihood to succeed. And I'm like, how do I convince this person? I don't know. I feel a bit sad. I don't know if that's the right feeling, but because I've seen it over my career as a recruiter, where a Unity developer I'm speaking to is working on their own game for like 2-3 years, and sometimes they get picked up, amazing. But most of the time, they're just not considered discoverability. And I asked them that, and I'm like, how do I show you? Like, can you tell them maybe something like to because it's not I'm not going through to a lot of these people.
Yeah, I mean, to each their own, I guess, is what I would say. The
Fair.
but it's an important point, and that is that the mobile is everybody has mobile, so everybody can play mobile. PC is definitely it's more of a, hardcore type commitment type of an experience, it seems. And the video game business is fraught with great products that but they're just different than very quick type games. So it kind of depends on what your taste is and what your interest is and how much time you have to devote to your game experience.
Fair. Great. So, shall we talk about AI?
Sure.
Let's let's do it. I have thoughts on AI. We're using AI. I will share my quick example if that's okay. So, I have a content based company. So we write LinkedIn content for executives. And the way we use AI is it really helps kind of make all the information easy to organize. We can find angles in the post and it helps us kind of get the first draft. And it is probably, we've done the math, like 2x star output. Now, the final output isn't done by AI, but a lot of the ops side really helps us. And I just had a call today with one of my clients, mobile gaming studio, and it took a good year for this to kind of be explained to their team, where using AI is not like a yes or no. It's like we kind of have to because the competition is, and we need to do more output for the same in, just like kind of VFX did that in the past, or like architects use CAD, they don't use pen and paper. That's my business approach. But the online sentiment is very different from like the business approach. And I'm wondering what you're seeing right now, like the adoption of AI. Like, do you feel like it's too slow? Do you feel like it's maybe too fast? People are making excuses. Like, I'm wondering what's your read of the AI in the games industry right now?
Well, I'm a big supporter of AI. I think that one thing I've learned in my life is that you can't fight change, and AI is definitely a big change, and so you might as well embrace it. And with that said, I've embraced it in a big way, and it really has a positive impact on my business. I use it for multiple purposes. I agree, from a copywriting perspective, it really helps out a lot, even from a positioning of your documentation and things like that. But I use it kind of like as a partner. And
Yeah,
if I'm running a great big company, I've got my research division, and I've got my sale division, and I got my marketing guys, and I got my finance guys. And in AI, I have all those guys again. And they're we're willing to debate and discuss things, and get to a point that we're comfortable. So I use AI extensively from a point of view of deal development, deal analysis, downside of deals, protecting that type of thing. So that's really important to me. So it's copy, and then it's deals, and then I'm really right now into the design part of it. And so whether I'm trying to do a movie to represent what I'm trying to show, in a short form or something, or I'm creating new slides that have a dramatic impact because of the fact that I've been able to get them up and going properly. I think that's really good. And Harry, for me, I've been using AI for 30 years. When we were at Hasbro Interactive with the Scrabble game, we inserted a very, very sophisticated piece of AI called Maven that allowed single player players to play against other people in a very fair and balanced way, because we had 5 levels from beginner to advanced and everything in between. So AI is something that the game industry is very comfortable with, and has applied it for many years. And I just think that it's going to have a very positive impact on the business going forward. But as you said earlier, people need to adjust. The jobs that we all had yesterday are probably going to be different for tomorrow.
for sure. Have you ever been part in your career where you kind of had to do a more of a town hall level of change across the organization? And the reason I'm asking that is I've spoken to some leaders who know they want to empower their team with AI, but it's either way too slow for their liking, or it's almost like a no. Like they're having to consider, should we get people who are more AI first? And I'm wondering if you have any words for them if they're in that situation.
I think that everybody kind of needs to go at their own pace to find what AI can do for them. And so you kind of need to be respectful for that, particularly during this period of time where AI is advancing so quickly and people are not advancing as quickly as the people are. With that said, I think, though, that if you're a leader and you are wanting to get your team to embrace AI more, probably the most important thing you can do is train them. And to me, my greatest frustration with AI right now is that things are advancing so quickly. It's hard to keep up and to understand, and there's no like real educational place where I can go. And I hear about Genie, I hear about Grok, I hear about ChatGPT, and I hear about all these different things. What should I be using? Which is the best thing for me? And it's kind of like the Wild West from my point of view, because everything's are popping up all over the place. But if you're in the game industry, you're used to the Wild West, and so you just kind of need to ride it out and find something that suits you.
Yeah. What are your thoughts of consultants there? So I am a big believer in the kind of secondary education space. So I spent an ungodly amount of money, like just, hey, you're smart. Please teach me thing that you know and I don't know. And I've done that and not paid myself instead because I want to grow the business. That's like my mindset. There's some gaming companies who have a whole training budget and they bring in outside help. And there's some which basically do zero. The thing is just they don't do it. I'm wondering what's your thoughts with like bringing in consultants. As a consultant yourself, there's a element here, but like across the whole industry, I feel like more of that needs to be done.
Well, the advantage of a consultant is that you can use and abuse them for what you need, and then you're done with them. And so, in the context of AI, if you are embracing AI, you probably need to be trained as well as your employees do. So, I would suggest that you find a consultant that is your consultant, and then will help the rest of your team as well. And you need to lead by showing that you're embracing AI on all levels, and you need to be sitting there giving examples of why it's helping your business, so others will embrace it as well, and then come back to you with, "Hey, this is what I found in AI, and this is what it's done to improve my business."
Great. I'd love to chat about M&A now. So for the first time ever, I had a VC reach out to me. They were invested in my company. And the reason I'm going to tell this story is I think it might be similar to some of the listeners here. So I haven't built my company with the expectation to sell it. I'm trying to build something like Virgin for the games industry. So in my head, I'm not going to be sold to another company. I might do an IPO. All right. And the VC reached out to me, and I'm not thinking about being acquired. But then we had the chat, and one of the questions like, "Oh, what would you do with 500,000 and 1 million?" And I started thinking, I was like, well, the only thing I would consider doing is more talent or acquiring media and get more attention, which might help. And then it got me thinking, well, okay, that would actually help quite a bit. And now I'm changing my mind of kind of what could I do with my business. But I personally haven't been wired to build my company to be sold just yet. I know I need to remove keyman risk and all that jazz. But it got me thinking about like kind of the games industry and how when you're looking at M&A, I want to talk to two different people here. So I want to start with the people who may be acquired and then move on to the people who are thinking about acquiring. So if you had a similar experience to me, you might have got one reach out, someone's interested in acquiring you in the games industry point of view. Like what do they need to know? Like what's a hard business lesson that maybe you've learned that I need to really consider before I'm always afraid of what I don't know. And then there's a bit of a power situation here, right? Like it's me against the VC. I want to make sure everything's fair. And you hear the horror stories. So yeah, I'm wondering what words do you have for someone who may be acquired one day? Like what should they consider?
I would avoid venture capital at all costs from your
Oh
point of
wow.
view.
Okay, let's talk. That's not
The
the answer I've had from other people.
the problem that they're going to create is that they're going to come in and you're going to want to do one thing with your business, and they're going to go, nope, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to go in this other direction. We're going to consolidate you with somebody else, and you'll be out of there within 18 months because it just won't work out. So, I mean, from my perspective, the last place you go to is venture capital. And for me, I raise money all the time. I raise it nonstop, but I'm really trying like heck to avoid venture capital. And the reason is that they hurt game companies more than they help game companies because they're not aligned. And so if I need capital, it's much better to go to trying to find the company that's going to license the product and have them help fund the product so that they're aligned with us from a point of view of getting to the point of revenues. So I know that that's probably not what you were expecting to hear from me, and I work with venture capital all the time. But they're a different animal than what the game industry is, because they could care less about fun, they could care less about the audience. They want to worry about driving growth, and they want to worry about what your cost per customer acquisition is, and it's like, wow, those things are all really important, but the primary reason for the business is this, and they want to go in someplace else. So
Hmm.
Sorry, but I'm not a big VC fan.
No, I've got a follow up question for you. So I was told you can just stipulate that, right? You get 100% voting rights. You reduce your VC pool. But is that just unreasonable? Is that unlikely? Like I'm thinking of Meta, right? He's got
Yeah,
still
you were
all the
probably
power.
told that by a venture capital guy, right? And
It was
and then
someone who
they'll be
used it
and
before.
then
Let's put it that way.
and then in page number 842, there'll be a sentence there that says, "This voids everything that I said before."
Yeah. So it's more of a
So I
principle
mean,
thing,
just
maybe.
I don't want to be too hard on this, but from my
Sure.
perspective, unless you're desperate, I wouldn't do a venture capital deal.
Okay. So we've seen new ways of financing games. Actually, over the last couple of years. So we have project financing now. We have obviously we've had publishing for a while, but there's also UA financing now, right? And what I've seen anyway from the conversations I've had is like VC has trended down, and these other three quote unquote alternative methods have kind of picked up. So you said you're raising money all the time. Like, is there a good way to raise money versus a bad way? Like, what should I be considering if I'm a game dev and I need money? Should I only go to a publisher? What should I do?
Well, to me, I would try to find an aligned partner, which is either a publisher or a distributor, and because of the fact that they're looking for those things too. They wanted to be able to generate the revenue, and so I think that that's really good. I also think that you can start with a smaller project and start to generate revenues, and then self fund yourself from a point of view of being able to grow your business. So I mean, I'm a big advocate of being able to do that as well. And then there are capital opportunities that are not like venture capital. So like family investment companies are good because what they want to do is they're more interested in the team and aligning with the team, and their goal is not to sell the business in 3 years. Their goal is to generate income from a long-term perspective. So there are certain parts of the industry from a point of view where you can find money that aren't venture capital, that have these really rigid requirements that are really hard on the entrepreneur. And as soon as the entrepreneur hiccups, the venture capitalists come in and wipe you out.
Mm. So family office is a much more, I guess, custom based deal. Let's put it this way: like they have money, but it's not going to be the 10x or 100x that VC will almost always want. So what I'm saying, yeah, is that right?
Yeah, like I sold a business a couple of years ago, and I ran into a group, and they were I wouldn't call it they were a celebrity group, and what they were is that they had people that had a lot of net worth and had some type of notoriety, and they were trying to do investments for good. And so what they
Okay.
wanted to do is they wanted to invest in things that they could be proud of. And the example that they gave me was that if they're standing at a cocktail party and they're talking about Candy Crush and they're saying, yes, and I have a big piece of Candy Crush and it's like good for the community and people like it, those are the types of investments they want. They don't
Interesting.
talk about return on investment. They don't talk about growth opportunities. They talk about do good in the world and something I could be proud to be associated with. So
It's
there's
like a
companies like that are really good to go out and seek out because of the fact that they're aligned with what you're trying to do.
it's almost like a status game then. Now I'm thinking it blurs the lines because the VC company that reached out is kind of a family. Let's put it this way: it's like these two brothers, and they only back Cypriot founder-led companies from pre-seed to seed. So it's a cool story, and I'm probably one
Yeah.
of three that is relevant to them at this point in time. Um, yeah, it's. Let's put it differently. When should I start thinking like? Because I've just had that happen to me. Now I'm thinking about it. Should I have been thinking about it before? Should I just try to bootstrap 90% of the time? Because I feel like I'm personally at a crossroads, and I'm wondering if someone listening is resonating. Because there's almost a analysis paralysis. There's so many ways to do it. How do I even find family offices? Should I go to publishers? Like, should I be doing all of these at the same time? When do I have time to make my game? Like, I feel like it's still quite unclear.
Well, I would be asking you, who are you? What do you want to do? And what's your goal over the next 3 to 5 years?
Hmm.
And, it seems to me like you're pretty independent and pretty happy with your lifestyle right now. It seems like your business is doing pretty good. And, you seem to be, doing good and growing. And your outlook over the next 3 to 5 years is you're going to continue to see growth and, see significance of your
I want to
business.
grow
So,
faster, Tom.
in that criteria, do you really need to share your business with somebody else? And if they do put some money in, is it really going to be beneficial to you? And if so, how?
So my mission is build financially and emotionally secure families around the world. I'll start with my teams. I will then do that with my clients, and then with our audience who enjoy these free content. That's kind of like my North Star, so to speak, because that's what I want for myself. I want that for more people. And in my head, now that it's not about me, because that was like a 5 month ago line in the sand that I wrote that, and now all the business is angled towards that. If I had someone come on along the journey and inject the meal, I'm now thinking, would I not have more impact, even if I personally have less of a percentage? Like now I'm having those conversations, like almost it's like rude not to take money because I will not help more families. I'm starting to make that connection.
Yeah, well,
Tricky.
you have a reason. It sounds to me like you're intrigued by this, and you want to do something. So go for it,
Yeah,
is what
maybe
I would say.
follow the curiosity and see what happens, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, sweet. Okay, what about if I'm the one acquiring? Someone may be listening to this who's thinking about acquiring a company. What's the three things they absolutely need to remember that you think they keep forgetting?
Well, I acquire a lot of companies. The most important thing is that what's the asset value from a point of view of long-term return, and so that's your IP and your games and things like that. The second question is that is the team going to be able to stay with you, and how talented are they? So that's really important to be able to look at the team. And then the third thing is that what kind of capital resources would be needed to be able to grow the business to what you think the full potential is.
Alrighty. Any hard business lessons, maybe? Do you have any stories, something that you went through and now you've kind of changed the way you've looked at acquiring businesses?
I think that when I first started acquiring businesses, I had a really cold-hearted perspective from a point of view that I wanted assets and I wanted growth. And I think that as I've evolved and I've matured, I've been understand that assets are only a part of what the acquisition is, and the people probably become the most important thing because they are the ones that create the value of the assets. So to me, I
Hmm.
think that paying as much attention as you possibly can to the team and keeping them motivated and inspired to continue on is a really, really important part to any successful acquisition.
Hmm. How how would you do that? How would you inspire a team that just got acquired? Have you seen any good examples of that? Like any tactics or practices they put in place?
Well, like when we bought Microprose, by far and away the most important person was Sid Meier because he is civilization, and so we paid a lot of attention to Sid, and he's not only a superstar designer, but he's a really classy guy. And what he is, just like what you were saying, he's all about his people and his team, and he wanted to make sure that they were all taken care of. So we gave a lot of assurances to that, and then it came forward that they were interested in a new property that they would like to look at, and so we kind of said, well, if the team is behind that, we should support it as well. And that really motivated the team that we were kind of aligned and wanted to continue to go forward.
Beautiful. So we've been chatting for a good 45 minutes now, and the people who've listened to this far are probably pretty interested in what we're talking about. Based on everything we've spoken about, is there anything that you wish kind of the type of person who would listen to this whole podcast who's maybe taking this seriously? What would you like to tell them? Like we haven't touched on today.
I'd like to say hello, and I'd like to say that the game industry is the land of opportunity, and I am a perfect example of that. Where I started really on the loading dock and ended up being at the highest levels of the industry, and the reason for that was that I really focused on people and I really focused on fun. And I think that as you go forward in your career, you need to do the same, and that is that really respect and honor the people that you work with, but always focus on, is it fun and is it something that I want to come back to again? And if you do that, those are the elements of what will make a really successful game.
Lovely, great. So if you don't mind, I tend to focus the last 10 minutes or so on what people can learn from how you evolved in your career. So maybe these are leaders looking to evolve or people who are entering the industry. So when you look back to Tom, day one in the games industry, day 1000, day 5000, like what would you tell Tom day one about kind of how to succeed in the games industry?
I would for me, it's all about working hard, and that is
So
and working.
define working hard because I think a lot
So
of people have different definitions.
working hard means that you need to think and think hard about what you want to do, and then you need to be able to apply it. And sometimes things get to be dicey, and you have to be able to have the work attitude and the work ethic to be able to work through that and get to the point that you're really trying to accomplish. So to me, I always tell people that the game industry is all about fun, and probably one of the biggest, most fun part about the industry is you really have to work hard to create that fun. So that means is that hard work should be fun.
Do you feel like people take that and maybe exploit that? Like, I've had a few different opinions where people should not be afraid of working hard. Where, if you really enjoyed your work, you should be thinking about it in your free time. And I've had the opposite too, where someone's like, no, work is work. Focus on making those 40 hours the best 40 hours and use something outside of work to maybe rest that part of the brain and then come in refreshed. I'm curious, like, these are very two different ways of working, and people can make a decision of what type of team they want to be in. I don't know what the split is, but I see both of those ways of working when it comes to like working hard. And I'm curious, like, what's your thought on that? Like, as a person who's a gaming professional right now, not necessarily a leader.
Well, I think that there's a time and a place for everything, including work, and then there's light work. There's work-life balance that you need to factor in too, because to me, you need to kind of what I do, and I'm a workaholic, so I have to deal with work all the time. But like even with my family, I'm also a great family guy, and so what I found is I needed to compartmentalize things. So when I was working, I was really working and focused on that. But when I got home and I was with my kids, I was really totally focused on my kids. So I think that's really important that you're able to compartmentalize. And then, as it relates to, whether you're thinking about your work or not, for me, just because it's in my mind, I'm always thinking about work. And, the lifestyle things that happen have an impact on what your life are, particularly if they're in the game industry. So I guess what I would say is from a work ethic point of view, if you're going to be a hard worker, enjoy what you're doing and make sure that you get the results that you're putting the effort into.
Beautiful. You might not expect this question, but I have been told that I move very fast. And I joke, half joke, and tell those people that's because I have a deadline. I want kids in 2 years. So I want to put all these things in place so I can be a great father and still run the company. So that's why I kind of work, maybe a bit too much in some, my dad's eyes, maybe, I don't take Sundays or Saturdays off because I enjoy what I do. And I tend yeah, this is getting very personal, but let's basically put it this way. So I have some family members or cousins who know they want a family but aren't trying because they want to get the career sorted first. And I personally feel it's quite sad because you then have the people who are 5 or 10 years ahead of that and they haven't started a family, but they're very successful at work. Now you're someone who has had a family and you've obviously been part of a lot of companies where there are people working there who had families well. And yeah, I just want to speak to that person who wants to have a family, but also wants to be really good at work and maybe share like what's helped you because I'm not there yet. I think it's going to be okay, but I want loads of kids. But a lot of people said, yeah, good luck. And I'm like, well, someone's done it. I can do it too. Like, I don't feel like it's too scary. So I'm wondering, as someone who has kids and you are, as you say, a workaholic, like, how do you balance it?
Well, I think that it's state of mind, and that is that you always have to have the attitude that family comes first. And a lot of times people talk to me and they say, "Oh, the people you work with, they're your family." And I really don't say that. To me, my family is this group of people that I'm committed to, which is my wife and my children and my direct family, and that's unwavering love. But whatever they do, I'm really committed to them. Then on the other hand, from a work point of view, I've got all these people that I'm associated with, and they're my team. And so I never do the crossover that my team is family and my family is my team. So that there's a line there from my point of view. But I also have the approach that I have to live by because I want it myself, and that is that family comes first. So if you and I are working on something and you come in and say, "Oh my God, my 2.5-year-old, just went to the hospital," from my point of view, everything stops. Even from my perspective, we've got to help you and your family get to a better spot.
Mm.
And it's a leadership trait, but that there's a genuineness there that really pays off from a point of view of caring about people more than caring about the business. So I think you have to look at it from that perspective. And then from a point of view of, work-life balance, there are times that, your kids kind of have to take a back seat because you're hitting a deadline and you got to get everything done at that point. But on the other hand, because you work so hard, those kids get the reward of going to Disney World for 10 days with their dad and spending that great time. So those are the touch points that you kind of have to
Mm.
work through from a point of view of being a workaholic. And I even found with my wife, what we ended up doing was is that even when I was on vacation, I needed to stay connected to my job. And so we would work. I'd get an hour in the morning and I'd get 45 minutes at night where the family would go and, eat dinner or something else. And I would get to do my work. And so after that, I was satisfied, they were satisfied, and everybody was good. So it takes
Mm.
communication and it takes some compromise on both sides to be able to get through the work issue.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. If this is too much of a personal question, just say no. But I have something that you have. Sorry, I want something that you have. So you work with your wife, from what I see on the LinkedIn. And to a lot of people's curiosity, I also work a lot with my family. So my brother's in the business. My younger brother was in the business and now he's doing his own thing. My brother's fiance is in the business. My cousin's joining the business. I hope my sister will join the business this year. And my girlfriend, eventually wife, will join in June 1st. A lot of family. And of course, I've been through ups and downs with what that is involved. Now, as someone who's done it for a lot longer than I have, when it comes to working with family, do you have anything that has served you really well that you don't mind sharing?
I think that even though you want to work with your family, if you're the boss, you have to set the course, meaning, where you're going to go and what you want to do. And I think that when you're working in a family, you have to be able to deal with conflict. And a conflict is really important in business and in family from a point of view that it resolves things. And so there's nothing wrong with you and your wife or your brother having an issue that you can't get past, but instead of not addressing it, address it, even if it takes a knockdown, drag out fight to get to the point that you both have figured it out. And
Mm.
so for me, I've worked with both of my sons, I've worked with my wife, I've worked with my family, and it all worked out. It all worked out really good. But there was a lot of extra communication, and there was a lot of making sure that everything was fair and balanced, not only from the family, but the extended team that I had that I was working with.
Beautiful. Ah, great. That has given me some confidence. It will be okay. Fantastic. Lovely. In terms of our conversation today, so we've covered merger and acquisition, kind of creating games of value, some hard business lessons, IP, licensing, kind of. I want to ask maybe a bit of a bigger question, like, sorry, a more open question, let's put it that way. So, what has changed in games and what hasn't? I would love to answer both of those questions to close it off. Like, what has changed in games over your career?
Advancing technology always changes. So, starting with card games and board games and then going to electronics and then going to interactive and then going to social is change, 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 change. So, you have to embrace change to be a game guy, and you have to be able to understand what those changes mean from a fun perspective. And then the thing that hasn't changed is that there's only one thing that matters in the game industry, and it doesn't matter how far you go back, and that is it's all about the fun. You're creating an engaging experience that people want to have fun in. And so if you can deliver that, yeah, you're going to have a good engagement experience and you're going to have a good audience that want to play your game. So to me, the one thing that has never changed is it with the pursuit of fun.
Great. This might be a bit of a, yeah, I'm going to do it. So, there are probably different ways to measure fun. How would you measure fun?
You're right. There's a lot of ways. What is fun? Fun can be really working hard. Fun can be goofing off. Fun can be all kinds of different things. For me, fun is something that is you're enjoying the experience with right now, and when you're done, you say, "Man, that was so much fun. It would be great to redo that again." And so, like if you're playing a video game, you get done and you have to go off and do other things, but you can't wait to get back to do it. That's repeat play, right? But on the other hand, if you're playing Risk and you and I are playing Risk and we got the game done, and all of a sudden you say, "Come back in a week, let's do it again." That's repeat play as well. So to me, it's about the desire and the pursuit of fun from a point of view of saying, "No, that was fun, and I want to do it again."
So, when it comes to measuring fun in my game, if I'm in the development phase, I don't have this ebb and flow of players. Would you say measuring fun needs to be all about repeat play? Like you let someone play it, and then if they don't or do decide to play again, then that's kind of like, that's no fun for this player. Yes, this is fun for that player. Is it simple as that?
Well, I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. It's who are you making this fun for, and then is it fun for that person? So, if you're doing like a word game and you're expecting me to play it, I don't like word games. It's just not something I'm really good at. So to me, it would be like a real challenge for me to say I want to do it again. So you shouldn't be
Mm.
probably making a game for me. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, if you're making a puzzle game or something that's like I'm talking about Puzzle Pyramid, that then it's like, wow, that was really fun, and I'll do that over and over and over and over and over. So it kind of depends on who you're trying to pursue with your fun.
Mhm. Sorry, I'm doubling down on this line of questioning. How many players is enough to ascertain that my game is fun?
Well, good
It's tricky
question.
because, like, yeah.
From a point of view of development, a lot of times it's me and one other person because we're saying, asking ourselves a million times, is it fun? What could we do to make it more fun? Because that's in the iterative stage, and then you get a little bit wider audience, and you get some people that you respect, and that will give you honest feedback, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, now I'm really beginning to look at that, and then when you get to that point, it's like, okay, I might as well commit to it and see if I can really make a fun journey here and make a good experience. A lot of it is that your intuition yourself when you're starting because you're the designer that's developing fun into your product.
It sounds like you have different milestones of how many people you will introduce this game to, and you won't necessarily have to go to mass market on the start, but also the other way around. Don't wait too long because, yes, if you and your friend love the game, then that might be just two people in
Yeah,
the worst case scenario, right?
yeah. I mean, even like in mobile games where you have a product ready and it's in beta, and you say let's test it in Canada. So you've got a big market, but it's not the huge market, and so continuing to test, continuing to iterate, and that kind of stuff to the point that even when you get the product in the marketplace and you've launched it, you're probably still iterating it and updating it and everything else. So in today's world, the game never ends. It's always iterated one more time.
Great. Last question. If you're advising a game founder today and they want to build a studio, a game that will last, a decade plus, what would you tell them to focus on first?
Well, I would tell them to focus on the specific area that they're trying to pursue or the genre. And then I would say that within that genre, what can they do to create a unique, fun experience? And then I would say is that based upon that, what's it going to take, meaning the team to be able to do that, and what's it going to take from a point of view of capital to be able to make the market happen? But then I also think that, once the game is done, that's when the challenges really begin because that's when you have to find an audience. And so you got to really work hard to be able to find an audience and feed that audience and maintain them as you go forward.
Beautiful. Tom, thank you so much. Really enjoyed today's conversation.
Thank you, Harry. It was a pleasure.
Great. How can people find you? How can people get in touch if they want to, talk your ear off, maybe get you to help them with some of their problems?
Sure. My website is www.dusenberryentertainment.com. And then you can easily email me at tom@tomdusenberry.com.
Great. Any tips on how to best get your attention, or do you read every email?
I pretty much read every email.
All right. Fantastic. Tom, thank you so much.
All right. Harry, thank you
All
so
right.
much. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. All righty.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.